There we go. Okay, so we're good to go. Yep.
Okay, so again, thanks everyone for coming along and welcome. And we're going to start with Shireen McFadden, who's going to give you our first presentation today. Over to you, Shireen. Thank you.
Thanks. I've not quite used this to share a screen before on Zoom, so if it just takes me a little moment, it's just that I'm learning it. So hopefully, is that?
No problem, Shireen. Take your time.
Is that okay? Can you see that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No problem. And what I might do is just while I'm going through it, I might just switch my camera off, just so I can kind of go through it, and then it makes me feel a tiny bit less nervous at speaking, if that's okay. Thank you.
No problem at all.
I'll just go onto it. And if I can learn how to do that, that would be good. Okay, there we go. So hopefully I'm into it myself. Sorry, I've still got this bit up on my screen. There we go. Okay, so hopefully that's all right for you all. So yes, at Alzheimer Scotland, we know that the COVID-19 has had a huge impact on so many people, and that the toll has been really difficult and, you know, harsh at times, many times, with people with dementia, carers and families. And we certainly have seen coming through, and in my experience of counselling so far, that the people we support have experienced trauma and anxiety and depression, and that's just a real small element of what's going on for people just now. And we know that an overall feeling is kind of, you know, feelings of being low and struggling with the day-to-day tasks. So yes, I am one of the new counsellors for the National Counselling Service. And it's important, I think, to say that it is a free service, and it's not just exclusive to people that have a diagnosis of dementia, but it's open to carers and it's open to family members throughout Scotland. So today I'm here to explore ways that might be helpful to build your confidence coming out of lockdown. And I often, as I was sitting writing this, I was thinking, where do I begin? And I felt like it was intrinsic to my practice that I do bring focus onto the individual lived experience of you as a person. And I'm mindful that within everything I share today, that some aspects might work for you and some might not. And I often say within counselling, it's about what fits and what doesn't fit. So even when something's brought back and shared with you, you know, and it's okay to say this doesn't work for me, or that hasn't been my experience, as well as it resonating. And I felt like there were a few points to think about as I was beginning. So I actually had been on the website and had really connected with some of the kind of pieces and stories that some people had shared on the Tide website. And I really wondered about how it felt about actually hearing terms like self-care and mindfulness, because I thought about a possible disconnect that some of these phrases might bring to what the lived experience might actually be. So I just invite you to think about how they might feel. Are they putting you off, or are they, you know, are they carrying any real meaning to your day-to-day? And then also in your own experiences, have you been able to use support? And whether that might be breathing exercises, you know, engaging in some peer support, or actually being able to seek talking therapies. And if you actually feel as if you have access to these things. Ultimately, I hope that you do find something today that might suit your daily life, and to think about what might be helpful to build your confidence moving out of lockdown. So yes, you might hear me already have referenced what might be the lived experience. And certainly, as I'd mentioned just before about having gone on the website, I really noticed feelings of isolation, which kind of predated the pandemic. And I thought about it as almost being symbolised as going hand in hand with the caring role. So it was just really inviting me to think about what might be your experience, and really appreciating how that differs and it's unique to you. In my work as a counsellor, there have been emerging themes, but common to each narrative has been how it's not been exclusive to just a couple concerns. Again, it's that whole picture of what's going on at the one time. I always think of it as, you know, kind of holding separate things and trying to hold it all together within your arms. There's a current circumstance, perhaps a recent stressor of the pandemic, then having both past and present experiences included, then you've got the experience of being a carer and also you as your individual self. I was thinking about how crowded this picture actually might look and feel, and then within that, how overwhelming that might be to manage. And I was brought to think about change and how change is challenging, and that today here really I feel as if we are discussing change, and to notice how these feelings are live and present, and how they all are happening at the one time. Which does bring me on to noticing. It feels a very counsellor term by itself, but I think it does kind of bring quite a lot. So what I thought I would do was to share an example with you, and I will be using the term client, and that is a term which does refer to anyone that uses, seeks, or is receiving counselling services. So I had a client who was struggling with their parent who was staying in residential care during lockdown, and they'd been battling feelings of guilt. They tried to visit their parent 3 times a week outside of a window, as well as hold down their job working from home, helping their partner to cope with their own loss of their parent during the pandemic, and to look after their teenage child who was at home missing their exams. They think they need to start to take care of themselves, but they have no idea where to begin. Their mind is so full, and it's that aspect of feeling scared about not knowing what is next, and that anticipation also of what else could be added on. As I listen to them and they're sharing in session 4, I hear everyone else but them and their sharing. And when the client's finished, I left a little bit of space, and this really may have only been seconds, but the client looked at me. I know what you're going to say. And I was interested, as I was kind of foreseeing what might, at this point of us two knowing each other, what might they think I'm going to say. And the client looked back at me and said, "What about me?" I nodded, and I recognized that within themselves, they've noticed, they've had that moment where it's kind of stopped them in their tracks to have a little bit of reflection and what I often refer to as a little bit of space, to be able to step back and notice their feelings of what's going on, and also where they might be missing within that, to tend to their own needs and to see what's going on. And within counselling, what we can try to do is to help them understand themselves better, and to show them how to ask themselves what we might refer to as the kind of the right questions. And until that happens, that can kind of act as that little bit of space, that little bit of moment of thinking, to help them lead their own action. I do kind of think about noticing a little bit further as well, in terms of, through my experience of counselling, it can be that opportunity for someone to almost reveal what that inner narrative is saying, and the opportunity to actually hear it out loud. So often I've noticed that I became aware of the language that someone's using in reference to themselves. There's particular words like should, ought, and must. And in terms of actually what feelings that might be bringing up from within yourself, it can place unreasonable pressure and demands, and it can form a possible negative thinking pattern. These statements can contribute to fear and anxiety. And I often think, what if we were to maybe replace those words or to reframe them? And referring back to my example that I shared in the previous slide, this person had shared with me, things like, I should have been more supportive to my partner, they're grieving, and I ought to have taken over homeschooling. I find it so hard to cope, but I must do better for them. Within this questioning, I'm still wondering where the client is, and I notice the demands, then the pressure, and a lack of space to process their own feelings by being consumed with a guilt and a sense of failure. And I kind of had this, sense that this negative thought pattern is kind of setting the client up for a failure. And then I just referred to this kind of quote that I came across, just to normalize that it, you know, that these feelings, they do come up, and it's not about banishing them and you know, really trying to actively get rid of the shoulds and the musts, but to be able to notice when they do come up, and then to feel what the impacts might be from that. And then I think about also what the next steps might be. And I often think actually one of the first steps after noticing is about that power of talking. And I understand that the experiences through the pandemic have really limited our access to being able to seek those relationships and to kind of actually have that balance of listening to one another and creating that space to be heard. But I think, you know, in terms of, you know, counselling, but more so within your day-to-day relationships, that experience of being seen, to be heard within your own experiences, and for that to be received, it's a really powerful exchange. And I do appreciate that it might require actually cultivating new relationships, and within that, you know, possible anxieties and fear over, you know, establishing those, but in small ways in which they could be built over time, could be really impactful to how it feels for you to be seen. And then when I kind of refer to what support networks are, I've kind of listed a few here, just in terms of maybe what peer support might be out there. And I do also think about this as like a kind of almost like a multifaceted aspect of each thing coming together. So whether that might be kind of receiving more practical support, and so that need is being met, but then also on a relational level, being able to talk freely and within your own experience. And then as well as kind of tending to kind of physical health as well, how each of these might be able to feed together to actually be able to improve the whole picture for yourself. And although I do follow a different style of therapy, I work off of person-centered, but I am really aware that there's many CBT programs, and they can be accessed online. Many people find these, you know, very helpful in terms of maybe that kind of solution-based approach. And I think that there's a way that kind of almost that kind of education, psychoeducation side can provide something to be able to step away from that and then see if they do fit in with your day-to-day and if they are helpful. So they are out there, and there may be something that can be accessed quite quickly. So that could be something that could be an area of interest. And then moving on to what is counselling. So it's, I think, kind of stepping into this space of, you know, what is it? Is it for me? Is it right? And to understand what it is at the beginning is a great kind of just a little beginner. And it's 50 minutes talking to a trained counsellor and really thinking about that kind of safe and confidential space for you to explore what's going on in your life that's causing distress or worry, and particularly affecting your kind of peace of mind at that time. It's an opportunity for you to have a very intimate relationship. And at the beginning, I very much appreciate how intimidating that space might be to enter. But it might provide a space that's out with your family and friends, and it's focused entirely on your needs. Importantly, there's no judgment, and certainly working off of person-centered, that's really one of our founding aspects, is to have that element of, you know, no judgment and empathy, so that it's your space to direct how you wish. And it can help you kind of, I always say about it as almost like a walk around your thoughts. They almost come up to the surface, and then you can talk about them. And then with your counsellor there, you can walk around them and be able to see all those different sides of what might be coming up for you. And then again, I think it's a very big question and one to really explore at the beginning. So sometimes that might be even receiving a leaflet on counselling, or kind of giving it a bit of a search beforehand. But particularly also within an initial session with a counsellor, to explore, am I ready for counselling? And what does that mean? Because the process of counselling, it can really be a kind of sometimes painful and challenging process, as well as being able to bring up feelings of hope and relief. The space can sometimes feel vast, and sometimes I find it amazing that time feels as if it goes in the blink of an eye. But some sessions, you might have that one week, and then the next week it might seem really open, and as if those words are just a bit more difficult to be able to locate and find. We really don't take it lightly, and I do appreciate in terms of how intimidating the space can be to enter, and particularly to talk to someone that you've never met before, and whether that be virtually or over the telephone just now, and entering into kind of sharing those parts of yourself which you might not be able to share with others. And it does ask something of you in terms of your commitment to be able to stick with the process, and thinking about, I also think of it as a jigsaw. If you want to think about it as a jigsaw within your, within your body, that pieces do get moved around within sessions, and then being able to kind of think about them and stick with that as the week goes on, as it can be quite confronting at times to wonder, why did I talk about that this week? And I didn't even know that that was something there that I wanted to explore. And to really stay with that and to see what's going on. Expectations of counselling as well. I often have this experience when my friends say to me, oh, you're a counsellor, or you must give good advice. And I'm like, whoa, that's really not what goes on here. And yeah, I get asked it a lot. And it's in terms of one of those things that as counsellors, we don't give advice because we're not the expert on you. You're the one who knows how best to cope with things, and in terms of that it's a process of us looking at what might work best for you at this time and going forward to cope, but that it's unique to you, and that there's no providing of solutions or advice that way, and that we can help you explore. And as I said, again, walking around to really focus on what resilience and feelings and things that you have to be able to pull from. As I certainly know that within my own experiences of counselling, having gone through that process, a little down the line when difficult feelings do arise, I've been able to have a kind of a sense of knowing within myself that although that moment is so difficult to take, that I know that I do have that resilience to be able to pull on, and actually having gone through it, I know that I can provide myself a solution at that time. So moving on to talk a little bit more about the National Counselling Service and what we provide at Alzheimer Scotland. It's a national team, and it's offered by telephone primarily and virtually. So at the moment, a lot of my clients are choosing to use Attend Anywhere. So like what we're using today, you can see each other's face and it can feel as if you're in the same room. However, when I've worked at previous organisations, telephone counselling works just as well. And if you prefer that sense of anonymity, and just to be able to kind of get those feelings out to begin with, it still provides the same kind of, impacts and feelings and what you can gain from attending counselling. And you can access this free service through Alzheimer Scotland with a dementia advisor, a link worker, or and also the helpline. But also it can be anyone that works at Alzheimer Scotland can refer you in. And the referral process, it's just a kind of, capturing a snapshot of information as to why you might want counselling. And then from that, we would call you and schedule an initial session just to be able to talk through what counselling looks and feels like, so that you gain an idea. And again, going through those questions, am I ready for counselling? Is it going to meet my expectations? And is this the right fit at this time? And even if it's not quite the right thing for you at this moment, it can be something that you revisit and it, can do at another time. It's also not exclusive to just talking about things that are related to Alzheimer Scotland or to your role as a carer. And one of the things I've always kind of picked up on through my experience is that, again, it's everything that's going on. So going back to when I mentioned before about the kind of past self and the kind of present self, and also the future, as well as the impacts of what it means to be a carer alongside yourself. There are so many different aspects that can come up at the one time. And we do manage this over 6 sessions. However, we are able to kind of take a review to see if that's right at this time. And if it's appropriate, we can have more sessions to be able to see you know, what that's like. And importantly, we always discuss how that relationship is working. And that's where I also come to talking about, is it safe? Because that relationship that you have with your counsellor, it's about, you know, are you feeling seen? Are you feeling heard? And if you know, you should have that ability to feel confident to be able to kind of enter into it and feel as if this space is open for you. Also, when I talk about, is it safe? We're also thinking about your own environment. So normally, perhaps if it was being able to be done face to face, there's that, you know, there's that knowing of confidentiality. So that would be that you're in a room and it's possibly soundproof, and that way where you're able to discuss. So now with it being done in your own home, it's to think about, you know, is that space safe enough? Are you perhaps going to be able to have a room where you're feeling not overheard? Or do we need to maybe put some things in place, like perhaps going to a resource centre, so that you have that peace of mind, as well as knowing that your counsellor's space is also confidential. I also really hold in mind the transition in and out of spaces. So when it's done, particularly at home, and with the role of being a carer, almost like the session begins, whether that's you logging in and the face of your counsellor comes up and, oh, there you go, there's your session starting. And also how it feels to leave the session. It can have a feeling of being abrupt. And that's something that, you know, you can talk through and perhaps have a ritual as you're coming out of it, whether that might be having a cup of tea or being able to take a dog a walk, something like that, where you're kind of gaining even just 20 minutes or, you know, as much as you can to be able to kind of decompress and let the kind of emotions of the session settle a little bit. And this is just a little bit about the kind of style of therapy. So I've mentioned it quite a few times about how we go from a person-centered approach. And that's really to you know, just reassure you that the counsellor comes into the session with no agenda, and that it's you who's directing where the session goes, and also coming back to what's safe enough, only going as far as what feels comfortable for you, and also what feels right for you within the space that you're in. So that's me come towards the end of my presentation. I do really look forward to any questions that you might have, and if there's any aspects that you feel I've not quite covered, I'm really happy to answer any of that. Okay.
Thanks so much, Shireen. That was a brilliant presentation. Such great information, really good to hear about the service, and I feel like I could talk to you. You've got a lovely way of speaking and delivering, so thank you so much for presenting today. We're going to make some time at the end for questions. We've got sort of 50 minutes aside, so if you're happy to stay on, then people can have the opportunity to ask some questions then as well. Thank you.
No worries.
Amanda, handing over to you now.
Thank you. So I'm just going to take the next 10 minutes or so and just take you through some aspects of a session that we run as part of our career development programme, which is called You Can't Pour From an Empty Cup, and it's about looking at your emotional well-being, and also some kind of really great activities and hints and tips that you can do to start thinking about taking time for yourself, and following on from what Shireen was saying, knowing where to start, because I think two of the main questions that come up all the time is, where do I start and wanting to do something for myself, and also round about how do I manage to fit that in, and where do I find the time to do that. So I'll take you through some of the things that we cover in that session that might be helpful for you. And then after that, we'll go on to our other guest speaker today, who is Anne, who's going to take you through some of her personal experience about what she's gone through in her caring role, and some of the really great hints and tips that she's got about what she would advise people to do in helping managing your emotional well-being. So I'm just going to hopefully share my screen again. This should, here we go. Okay, so the premise of our session is that you have to take care of yourself first, and that if you don't take care of yourself, then you will get to the point where you do start to run on empty, and you can't pour from an empty cup. So when you get to that point, then you will start to really see that affect you both physically and mentally, and it will also have a huge impact not only on you, but also on the person that you're caring for as well, because you will get to the point where that is your crisis point. So it's really important to think about ways that you can hopefully try and keep your cup filled or half filled, or something within that, so you don't get to the point where it becomes empty. And a lot of you might be familiar with the kind of older fashioned safety demonstrations they used to have in aeroplanes, where they would say to you that if the oxygen mask came down from the ceiling, then you should put your own oxygen mask on first before you begin to help anyone else. And that's because if you don't do that for yourself first, if you can't breathe, then you won't be able to help anyone else. And it's that kind of metaphor about thinking about taking care of yourself first, and that is the most powerful way that you can begin to care for others. And a lot of carers will feel guilt attached to that, about taking care of yourself first, and feeling that you shouldn't, and that you should be taking care of the person, and that you'll prioritise their care over everything else. But that is when you do the damage to yourself. And it's important, and one of the best things that you can do for a person that you're caring for is to take care of yourself first, because that enables you to continue with your caring responsibilities and to manage all of the hugely complex issues that come your way. So I want you to think about that today and after today. When you do feel you're struggling, or you do feel like you need something, just think about your own oxygen mask and what you can put on to help you breathe. And it's really round about self-compassion. And so this is our kind of mantra here, is to first breathe in compassion for yourself, and then breathe out compassion for everyone else. So love yourself the way you're loving the people that you care for. You know, give yourself that same attention, and give yourself that same level of love and understanding, because you deserve it and you need that as well. And it's important, and it's not selfish to do that, and it's not, you know, self-absolved to do that either. It's really important to do that, and it's probably, again, the least selfish thing that you can do, is to give yourself some compassion and look after yourself first. And I just wanted to mention this again, and it's again reflecting on what Shireen said. It's really important as we go through this session, and even after today as well, that you do what works for you. So please don't compare yourself to other people. It's really hard, and I think we do that often, that we try and, you know, compete with other people. And I think sometimes as well, it might be you hear from other carers and they might say, I do a certain thing, you think, oh, I don't do that, why do I not do that? And then you put that level of expectation and guilt onto yourself, because you think that you should be doing the same as everyone else. But we're all individuals, and we're all different, and one size doesn't fit all. So you have to do what works for you. And I think that, again, in line with what Shireen was saying, whatever we talk about today, you might not be ready for it just now. You might think that it won't help you at the moment. You might think that you're not ready to be in this space. And so the reason that we're having sessions like today is so that you have all that information, and then you do it whenever you're ready, and you'll know yourself, because you get to a point where you have that instinctive notion that you need to do something for yourself, and you need to get that help. So we want to have that there for you whenever you're ready. So don't feel any stress or pressure to do anything that we talk about today. Just take it at your own pace, but know that there's different things that you can do. And what's really important is to choose the thing that works best for you. And you might need to try a few different things. You might need to try things again that you've done in the past, or you might need to try new things that you've never tried before. And then once you do that, you'll find something that works for you, and then you should stick with that and not worry about everyone else. So as I mentioned earlier on, one of the main issues that comes up all the time is that you don't have time as a carer to be able to do something for yourself, and it's really difficult to wonder where that's going to fit into your every single day life and all the different activities and routines that you have going on. So I wanted to cover a few very short things that you can do, which can be incorporated into everyday activities that you're already doing, so that you can try and carve out some time for yourself. And you might think to yourself, even, 2 or 3 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes doing something won't actually have an impact on me, but it will. And it's a really great step in the right direction of doing something for yourself. So you can do some short breathing exercises. Again, I spoke to a lady who told me that she really struggled with everything that she had to do on a daily basis. And one of the best things that she started to do was a few short breathing exercises for 2 or 3 minutes every day when she woke up before she got out of bed, and that really started to help her. So you can start off by doing something really small like that, and there's lots of ways to do that. You can find lots of these kind of breathing exercises, and I've said there's lots of kind of meditation videos. If you search on YouTube, there's lots of free ones that are on there, and they'll have the timings next to them, so they can be very short, and some go for 5 or 10, 15 minutes, right up to an hour or an hour and a half. And these are really great to kind of start using. You can get lots of apps that you can download onto your phone, on your tablet, that you can use that help you with. Sometimes it's that kind of guided stories as well, which are really great just to help you relax. If you're finding it, troublesome to go to sleep at night as well, it's a really good way to try and kind of just get your mind to just calm down and switch off a bit from worrying about everything. So there's lots of different things that you can do. We've also got a few short breathing exercises that we'll include in the handouts that we're going to give out for each of the sessions that we've done. And you can just find your own and start to kind of adapt those. But even just taking that couple of minutes at the beginning of the day, or even at the end of the day before you go to sleep, and just have some quiet time just to do a few deep breaths, that will really start to help you. And the other thing that you can do, and again, Shireen was talking about mindfulness, and I think a lot of people are quite kind of apprehensive about mindfulness and think that you're going to have to sit there and meditate for an hour at a time, in a lotus position and all this kind of stuff, and that's not true. Mindfulness really just is about being mindful, about being in the moment, and about grounding yourself. And there's some really easy and quick ways that you can do that. A really easy way to ground yourself is if you take off your socks and your shoes and you just have your bare feet, whether it's on the carpet at home, if it's outside in the grass or the ground. Sometimes that can just be a way to very quickly ground yourself and be in that moment. But the other way that I find is really helpful is to have mindfulness during everyday activities that you're already doing. So if you think about this morning, most of us will have had a shower or got washed this morning. And so how many of you here can honestly say that you were aware of everything that you did during that time? You most probably went ahead and did it without thinking, because it's a routine that you do on a daily basis, and you went through all of the tasks as part of that on an automatic, robotic type fashion, because it's just something you're used to doing. And most probably most of you will have been thinking about something else while you were doing it. So you were either thinking about, maybe it was getting kids out to school, maybe it was thinking about having to get some shopping later on, maybe it was thinking about what you have to do for work today. So you were never really thinking about what it was you were actually doing at the time. So there's a really easy way to try and ground yourself to that moment. So tomorrow or the next time you're going to have a shower or get washed, just really be mindful of what it is that you're doing at that time. So think about where you are. So when you go into the bathroom, think about, right, what colour are the tiles on the wall? What colour is the flooring? What kind of shower gel did you use? Do you remember this morning? What does it smell like? What does it look like? What does the water feel like when it's hitting your skin? Just take a moment to be there and be in that moment. Just smell what your shower gel smells like, or your shampoo. Just take that time to smell it and sniff it in, and just be there and think about, what does that smell like to me? Think about what you can hear. So do you hear noises from outside the window? Do you hear birds? Do you hear traffic? Do you hear other noises in the house? Just think about everything that's happening round about you at that time. And again, even for that 5-10 minutes that you're doing that, as you start to concentrate on those tasks, it will stop your mind from going at 100 miles an hour and thinking about everything else that you need to do. And again, that's still really beneficial, even if you can carve out that 5 minutes just to stop that worry and that stress. And you can apply it for any activity that you're doing. So it could be making a cup of tea. So next time you go into the kitchen, think about, what cup am I using? What colour is it? What is the liquid that's going in the cup? Is it hot? Is it cold? When I drink it, what does it feel like? What does it taste like? So you can still do that as you're going along. You can do it along with the person that you're caring for as well. You can have activities that you're doing with them that you're already doing as part of your everyday life. So just think about, each time you go to do the activity, as you're doing it with the person, what can you see? What can you feel? What can you smell? What can you hear? Those are the kind of best ways to try and ground yourself in the moment. So you can apply it to anything at all. You can apply it to looking out your window. You can apply it to if you go on a walk. So there's lots of different ways to just do that and give yourself time. The next kind of point is really thinking about, again, where do you begin and what can you do? So there is a huge number of things that you can do to take care of yourself and put yourself first. And it's really, the key thing is about A, setting realistic goals, and B, finding something that you really care about. So thinking about something that's either a thing that you're passionate about. It could be a hobby that you might have given up because your caring roles become really more intensive. It might be something you did when you were younger that you'd like to do again, or it might just be something that you do like to do, but you just find, I'm not getting enough time to do that. And it's really important, again, to try and carve out some time to do something for yourself. And if it is something that you really care about, it will have more of a benefit to you. And then again, it's thinking, well, how do I do that? How do I go about doing that? And it's really about setting a realistic goal. And the easiest way to do that is just to pick one thing. And that's the homework that I'd like to give you from today's session about going away and thinking about it. It's just to think about, pick one thing. So you can look at this list here. And of course, this list is by no means exhaustive. There's lots of different things that you can do. So if there's not anything on here that you fancy, then think about something that you do want to do, or choose one of these activities here. And then what I want you to do is, I want you to think about writing it down somewhere. So we have these little post-it notes here, which I can give you as a download that you can use, or you can just use a post-it note or a piece of paper that you have at home, and pick one thing that you're going to do for yourself, and then write it down on this bit of paper. And then put it somewhere that you'll see it every single day. So put it either, it could be on the fridge, it might be next to your bedside table, it could be in your car, it might be in the mirror next to where you get ready in the morning. And every single time you see that note, just read it again and say, for myself, I'm going to, and remind yourself about what it is that you're going to do for you, because it'll be so easy just to get swept back into everyday life and everything that's going on. And you'll say to yourself, I'll do that next week, or I'll do that tomorrow. But try and remind yourself every time you see it, just think, I'm going to do that for me. And again, about realistic goals, don't set yourself something to say, I'm going to have to do this every single day, or I'm going to do it every single week. It might be you start off by saying, I'm going to do this once a month, and then start doing that. And then as you start to build it up and start to try and find that time for yourself, you'll see that there is ways to do that, and there is easy ways to try and start doing something for yourself. And then you'll start to feel that both internally and externally for yourself, and it'll start to make you feel better. So it's really important to do that for yourself and pick that one thing. And the last thing I just wanted to cover was a few other ways that you can try and adopt to fill up that cup for yourself so that you don't run on empty. And one of the things that a lot of the carers that we work with talk about, and it's one of the most important things to do, but it's probably one of the hardest things to do, is to sit with your thoughts and feelings and to feel them. And a lot of people are really afraid to do that because they feel like if they were to start crying, for example, they wouldn't be able to stop, or if they open up that box, they won't be able to put the lid back down in it again. But there's going to be lots of times where you have lots of strong feelings connected to caring for somebody with dementia, and also just for things that will happen outside of your caring role in everyday life. And it's really important that when you have a feeling, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whether it's happiness, whether it's joy, then allow yourself just to sit for a couple of minutes and feel that feeling. And even though sometimes it might be painful to do that, it's really helpful just to kind of get those feelings through your system and to manage them. Because if you just keep pushing them down all the time and not acknowledging them and not feeling them, eventually at some point that will come out either in a physical symptom or a psychological symptom, or both, and it'll be your body's way of telling you that it can't cope anymore and it needs some help to manage the feelings. So it's really important to try and feel those feelings and sit with them. And the other way to really try and help yourself to manage it is to sign your own permission slip. And what I mean by that is to give yourself permission to feel and think things. Because again, often we put a lot of guilt and expectation on ourselves and say that we shouldn't be feeling these things and that we shouldn't be feeling this way. And we let other people influence us and tell us that we shouldn't feel this way. And what I wanted to say today is that you should sign your permission slip. And I want to do that for you today. So I want to say that as of today, if you feel any of these things, if you feel all of these things, if you haven't felt any of these things yet, or you only feel some of them, it's okay. It's okay. You're allowed to say it's hard, because what you're doing is hard. Managing all the different aspects of caring for someone, as well as everything else in your life, is hard. So you're allowed to say it's hard, or think it in your head. You're allowed to be angry or frustrated. You're allowed to cry in the shower, in the car, you know, on your own, whatever it is. Any of those feelings, that's what I mean by saying sit with those feelings and feeling. You're allowed to have those feelings. They're emotions, and they're natural, and they're normal given the circumstances that you find yourself in. You're allowed to not be okay, and we hear that all the time, but it's really important. It's okay to not be okay. You're allowed to ask for help. It's important. That's what Shireen was talking about. If counselling is something that you think you would benefit from, it's okay to ask for that help. It's okay to ask for help from other people who are experiencing the same issues as you. It's okay to ask for help from family and friends. And it's okay to take time for yourself. That's really important. It is okay to do that, and that you should be doing that as well. So again, sometimes if you're worried, if you start to feel these things and you think I shouldn't feel them, just remember your permission slip, sign it and say, actually, I'm giving myself permission to feel or to say or to think these things, and that will hopefully help you too. Finally, it's just a way to find a good way to express your thoughts and feelings, because when you start to acknowledge them and sit with them and feel them, it's really important to find a way to then have a way to express them. And again, it's about finding what works for you, and everybody's different and everybody finds different ways to do that. But a good way to do it is to write down your feelings. And one of the best ways is called free writing. So it's just to get a scrap bit of paper or a notebook in the house, and just whenever you're having a moment when you're feeling any kind of feeling, just sit down and just write down whatever comes into your head. It might be full sentences, it might be words, it might not make any sense to anyone else but you. Some people write it down as a story, some people write it down as poetry. Whatever way you find works for you, write that down, and then that gives you a way of kind of getting those feelings out of your system. And sometimes it's really cathartic just to be able to write them down. Other people find it really great to do it through other forums, whether that's sometimes taking photography, so just taking some pictures about how you're feeling. Some people do it through music, some people do it through art. So again, find whatever way works for you and find a way to express your feelings, because that will really help you to manage them as well. Again, reflecting on what Shireen said, finding a way to connect with other people. So finding people who understand what you're going through, and that peer support. So whether that's through places like Tide or Alzheimer Scotland or local carer centres or other organisations that you're in contact with, it's really important to do that. It's important to set your goals. So find out what you want to do, pick that one thing and try that for you. And the last one is just to take notice, be present. As I said, try and find that 10 minutes to be present in what you're doing, and also to find the joy in what you're doing, because I think a lot of times that we're so busy just keeping going in survival mode that sometimes we forget to stop and actually enjoy moments. And sometimes I think a lot of carers feel guilty because they do have times where they're laughing, where they're feeling happy, and then they feel guilty because the person with dementia might not be able to feel the same way anymore, or you feel like you shouldn't be having a good time because they're not having a good time. But you're still living and you still have to live, and you still have to live after that person dies. So it's really important for you to find joy in your own life. So when you are having those really great moments, stop, be in that moment and feel that joy, and that should hopefully help you as well when you're having really down days, because it's important that you can go back and think through these memories and remember what it felt like when you were having a good day, and that will sometimes help you get through those bad days as well. So we've also got free writing kind of journal pages that you can do. So again, I'll give you them to download, or again, as I said, just use a bit of paper that you have in the house and a notebook in the house. And the other really important one that we do is gratitude journals as well. And some of you might have done that before in the past. And again, you can just do that with a spare notebook you've got in the house. And so again, either first thing in the morning when you wake up or last thing at night before you go to bed, if you just sit down and write down 3 or 4 things that you're grateful for that day and write them down, it means that again, when you're having a down day or having a day where you're really struggling, you can go back through your journal or back through your pages and read through, and you'll actually see that you've got a lot of things in your life that you find that you're grateful for and that you find joy in. And sometimes that can also be really helpful, just to help when you're having a couple of down days as well. So that's just a few different examples of some of the things that we cover in that session, and some of the things that you might find useful yourself. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you. Gillian, have you got anything you wanted to add in there?
That was great, Amanda. Thank you. And I suppose just reflecting and tying it into the kind of easing of lockdown and restrictions starting to lift, it can feel like some things are going back to normal again, and maybe some activities or some things that you used to go to or maybe be coming back again. And I think it can feel like a little bit of pressure. You know, it can feel like there's pressure to start building up your social life and your life how it was pre-pandemic. And bearing in mind, we have been in over a year now living in a very different climate where we haven't seen as much of our families and friends, and we haven't had that sort of outer social contact with the rest of the world, really. So I suppose you mentioned it in your presentation, Amanda, and I think Shireen did as well. Just be kind to yourself. You know, don't put expectations on yourself to think you have to do it all at once. You know, and I don't even think that's exclusive to being in the caring role. I think a lot of people have got concerns and fears about coming out of lockdown and starting to go back to any kind of normal again. And I suppose maybe it's good to break that down and take baby steps. You know, do little things at a time. Do the things you feel comfortable with. Do the things that feel safe, and things will grow from there. Because as Shireen mentioned, it's dealing with change again. It's something different and something new again. Going kind of back into the world again, and yeah, that can definitely sort of bring some fears and anxieties for people. So recognizing those and allowing yourself time and allowing yourself to say no sometimes as well. If something doesn't feel right or something doesn't fit with your life, allowing yourself the option of saying no sometimes too, because there can be social pressure sometimes to go along to things too. So I think that's all from me, Amanda.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's some really great tips as well. I'm now going to move on to our final speaker for today, who is Anne Irvin. So welcome, Anne. And Anne's going to take us through some of her personal experiences, and again, hopefully share some inspiration with you about what you can do, and some of the things that she's learned through her experiences. So over to you, Anne.
Hi, Amanda, thanks very much. Hard act to follow. You all done amazingly well. That was so good. Absolutely get what you're saying, Amanda, about pouring from an empty cup. Breathing is such a wonderful thing. It's something I do quite regularly. So yeah, no, you've all done wonderful. Yeah, my name's Anne. Today I'm going to be reading from a script because I'd go off on a tangent if I didn't, so please bear with me, everybody. I took early retirement to look after my mum, going back 7-8 years ago now, but I do volunteer for Alzheimer Scotland and the Prince and Princess of Wales Hospice. Yeah, I'm not going to get into deeply anything that I endured during my time as a carer, so I'd keep it a bit lighter today, and just kind of share how I'm feeling and how I'm coping. So today I want to share with you hopefully how we can all come out of COVID lockdown and back into, it's typical as the phone's just ringing, to apologise, back into a caring role in society in general. As a current and a past vascular dementia carer and a lifelong carer in many guises, I've been thinking about how I felt during the COVID lockdown and all its restrictions. I will admit that the emotions that I was experiencing at the beginning of lockdown last year had all felt really, really familiar to me. Feeling of despair, fear, hopelessness, unknown outcomes, and all the things that we just didn't know what was happening. And then it hit me one day, and in an odd way, while I was actually doing my dishes and staring out a tree, out my window at a tree in my garden. It'd been there for such a long time, and in my busy life, I'd never really stopped to look at it. You do find clarity in strange places. But all these emotions that I felt then was exactly the same as I'd been feeling as a carer. I realised that although dreadful and frightening things were happening outside, that I, along with all my fellow carers, were actually quite well equipped to cope better than folk that this was all new to. It prompted me to write a short story called My COVID Tree, which if I've got time to read later, I will to you. The reality is that no matter what's happening in the outside world, we as carers cannot and do not want to change our routine, our support, and more importantly, our love. But sadly, the support for external sources did change during lockdown, and it still is the same way just now. The blessing is that the person I'm currently caring for is my mum-in-law. She's stable, she's calm, and she's coping with all the big changes. Me and my husband would come in, the nurses arrive, and we're all in masks and gloves as everybody is, but no close contact and no hugs. It takes its toll. But I can't help but think that I'm so happy that I didn't have this journey when mum was ill, because she was the complete opposite. She was angry, she was always scared, and panic and mayhem ensued in our house on an hour-to-hour basis, never mind a day-to-day basis. There was never a dull moment. She just wouldn't have been able to rationalise the safety issues. But it's actually a good point to say that although we are all carers, we all have such a different journey and a story to tell and feelings to cope with. And I'll admit just now that I'm not coping very well at all. I'm anxious, I'm really scared to go back into busy places, and I can recognise that this is an issue for myself, and I've put my hands up. I had a chat with Alzheimer Scotland, and so I'm actually doing the counselling service that's available just now. It's not with Shireen, it's with one of the other counsellors. And it's been really helpful. I'm only number 2 just now, and I feel that it's made such a difference already. And it's okay, it's more than fine to admit you aren't coping, that you have to sometimes put a brave face on it, and it's not healthy to do this in a long time. It's bad for our physical and our mental well-being. But I've learned that we carers, always at the back of the queue, as you know, we're always looking after other people. Everything else comes along before us. We love them, we're being their strong and visible support, and the battle that we have for our loved ones, for their justice, their healthcare, financial support, medical assistance, as you all know, the list goes on. But we so have to look after us, as we can't run on empty for too long. I remember with my mum's journey how I felt. At the beginning, it felt like a big wide funnel. All started out great, and I thought, I'm strong, I'm capable, I can do this. But as time went on, I felt every bad experience that happened, every year that went past, that I was slipping further down that funnel. And eventually you get to a point you're in the bottleneck where there's no air, you feel you're drowning, there's nowhere to go, no safety net and little support. But I survived, as we all do, and I wouldn't change a second of it. You can never buy back that time, you can never make those memories again. It's one of the best jobs in my career, I often say that. But it's also most rewarding, it was character building, and I'm very proud of it. And the fact it's on my CV now, and the reason I got offered a new job in 2018, because a wonderful employer out there, and there's not many of them, seen this as a valuable position, that not a career lapse as a lot of them did see in other ways. The most important thing I feel personally in my view is that you have to surround yourself with the right people if you possibly can. The phrase "you have friends for a reason, a season and a lifetime," it suddenly all made sense to me. Even in this day and age with progress in mental health awareness, I think the stigma still remains. And I stand in a soapbox all day and rant about that, along with palliative care rights and better funding. But as I often do, I go off on a tangent, so I'll stick with my script. But some of my friends, and I use that word loosely at times, were either afraid of the illness and my honesty in discussing it. There was some that didn't know what to say when I'd explained how bad things were the night before, when Mum just threw her dinner over me. I'm sure we've all had experiences similar to that as well. They just disappeared off the radar. But the funniest one of all was one lady that I was friends with, and she'd taken a half-day holiday, and I couldn't meet her for the whole days I was going to. I could only meet her for 45 minutes, and she couldn't understand what was wrong. She said it was a waste of her holiday. But I don't think if you're a carer you get it, but if you don't, my hubby had to go to work, so I couldn't leave the person alone. But there are the lifetime friends that I'll never be able to repay their love and their support. They'll get up early, they met me at 7 o'clock in the morning for a coffee before they started their work, as it meant I could have an hour before my husband went to his work to look after Mum. Then there was the other ones, they were also on the phone 24/7. Sometimes you don't want advice, you just need someone that's going to listen to you, understand you and be there. And we all know that true friends and family are ever so precious. Read an Alzheimer Scotland fundraising poster that said, "The person with dementia isn't giving you a hard time, the person with dementia is having a hard time." And I think that strikes a chord with all of us. We need to keep raising awareness on how this is not only affecting the person diagnosed, but the family, the friends, the carers, and the ripple effect that you've heard us all talk about before. I'm finding that keeping in touch with all my contacts and my various volunteering roles is good, because I miss them so much, and it's a focus and a path forward when we're free to roam again without fear of COVID. Keep talking, keep listening to carers groups like this, they're so invaluable. Just to know that other people feel the same as you, they're happy to share their thoughts, it helps you get through another day. Personally, I'm a very holistic person. I love Tai Chi, Qigong, mindfulness and meditation. And the beauty is you don't need a lot of time, space or money to do any of them. And they're all available online and on YouTube. And it's great until we all can get back out and attend classes again. Some can even be done seated, so they're quite simple. But what I will say at this point is that please always check your GP or a health professional before undertaking any kind of keep fit, even if it's easy going. Best thing that I've ever done in lockdown and any other time is if you get a good walk. Gives you a good dose of vitamin D. It's where you can think clearly. It's good for my heart, my bones, my waistline. Although I will add, I come home and have a cup of tea and a cake, so that kind of rules that one back out. I used to do lots of rambling and hill walking, and I've been walking since I was a child. And it's the single best thing for me, so it makes me feel alive, and you have a clarity in your mind when you're walking. I try to do up to 10,000 steps a day, but very seldom does it actually happen, but I do try. And I read somewhere that every 2,000 steps that we take, whether that's in your house, the garden, or just around your local area, all adds up to 1 mile. COVID has taken my confidence. I can't run away from my emotions like I used to. I used to always keep busy and put everything that was worrying me behind me. I was very strong, I was capable, at times fearless. But I would try anything new. I was halfway through an HNC acting course at university when lockdown happened. I was enjoying my enforced early retirement, holidays, making new friends and doing new hobbies. When I thought about it, I thought, I guess I was living for the first time in my life without a carer's title. So I do believe that COVID has made us all stop. It's made us think and reassess our lives, who we are, who we want to be, and what the outcome's going to be. After my caring role ended in 2017, I was at an all-time low. I had no title. I felt nobody needed me. I felt thrown out of the caring bubble, and I was on my knees. But I got up, I learned to live again, and I started a new caring role all over again. But I will say this time with a lot more knowledge, and I do it smarter this time. I'm using technology, and it's played a big part, and it's ever so helpful. I know it seems quite worrying, but it's really simple and easy to use with lots of advice, so don't be afraid of using it. I used to use Post-its, blackboards in Mum's time, but it's amazing how things have moved on. Also consider writing poems and short stories. I find them really, really, really therapeutic. Also monologues, slightly different in it, they can be very powerful. So it means that you can act them out, even to yourself, just in front of a mirror. It helps you see it all clearer, what's in your heart and your head. And you know yourself, once you've written it down in paper, a problem doesn't seem as bad. But then when you actually say it out loud, it kind of takes on a new aspect. So yeah, it's nothing amazing. I'm afraid I'm not as knowledgeable as all my previous speakers, but thank you for listening to me, and please look after yourselves and remember what an amazing job you're doing. And our loved ones can't always find the words to express this, but we know that they love us, and they know that we love being their ambassador. So please do look after yourselves, everybody. And if I get time, I'll read my short story at the end. If not, I'm sure it'll be online. But thank you very much, and look after yourselves.
That was great. Thank you, Anne, for that. And you're absolutely just as knowledgeable and have just as much experiences as we all do. So that's really great. And thank you for being open and honest about your experience, and hopefully that will have helped people today. Okay, so we now have some time if anybody wants to ask any questions to anybody who's been speaking this afternoon, or any comments, we can put them in the chat box. Or if you want to ask a question, you can just kind of press the raise your hand button under reactions, so we can see who wants to speak. Is there anyone who's got any questions? No, if we all have we stunned you all? Oh. Yep. There's nothing in the chat box. Anyone get any questions they want to ask, or any comments? Anybody get anything that they would like to share about things that they've tried that's been helpful, or anything else they're worried about that we might be able to help with? No. Okay.
Amanda, I wonder if nobody's got any questions right now, or if people need a little bit of time to think about any questions they have. Like you said, they could put them in the chat box, but I wonder if it might be nice to hear Anne's short story.
Yeah.
If you're happy to do that, Anne.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, she was ready. She was already queued up in case. So yes, we did. Yeah, go ahead, Anne. That would be great.
Okie dokie. Nothing exciting again, but I'll have a bash at it. It's called My COVID Tree. It was an unremarkable tree. I've seen it outside my kitchen window for over 30 years. I watched this tree grow, and I see it whilst I'm at my sink doing my dishes. Think about it, I think, Jings, how time and life flies by. Have I really been here that long? Excuse me. I've never gave it a second thought. It's just always been there. But like so many things in my unremarkable life. But in reflection, when I think about that tree in my life, they weren't either of them unremarkable. Every little thing put together was in fact my wonderful life. Lockdown, it began the 23rd of March. We all knew it was coming. I remember noticing that tree. It looked bare, it looked bleak, just about how I was feeling, to be honest. So came the dark days of April. Many lives were being lost with this unknown illness. There was fear, there was uncertainty. But not my tree, it seemed fearless. It started producing buds. Made me smile, and I thought about the new life it was blossoming. May came, there was reports of many, many thousands of deaths worldwide. The loneliness, the fear, the depression, it all set in with us. I actually started to feel captive in my own home, not able to do my own budding and blossoming just like the tree. Then I was delighted. Early June came and the leaves unfurled. It looked like spring was becoming summer. It was full of promise. June had its bleak moments as well for me, sadly. I lost my little bundle of joy, my dog. My best friend, my confidant, and my reason for a walk outside had gone. But as July came, I stood there taking comfort from a tree. The world, it was still holding its breath. There was no vaccine. This virus had spread and families couldn't give each other a hug or meet. It was all so alien to all of us. And many thoughts and fears were running right in my head. I was grieving for the life I'd lost this year. I thought I'll never get it back. But this tree, my tree, it was unaware of the world's pandemic and all my dark thoughts. In August, my tree started to look stunning. It moved gently in the breeze on a sunny summer's day in full bloom. It was helping to support the local wildlife and population. Nests and fledglings were all blossoming from it. Things started to look promising by September. The cases and the deaths were down. Schools and universities went back. Shops even opened and some people met up for coffees. In a mass and at a distance, but we were outside and living again. I do miss hugs so much. I took the step and I ventured to a shop. It was the first time in 5 months. It was a sad day. I used to love shopping. I shopped so quickly, I felt there was no joy from it just now. No smiles, no chats to my fellow shoppers. Avoiding them, in fact. You do miss the human connection of wearing a face mask. I've been doing online shopping since March, only seen my husband and my mother-in-law in close contact in all that time. But I thank goodness for technology to keep in touch with everyone else. I take an early morning walk at 7 a.m. It's quiet, it's peaceful, and it's safe. I realised at that point I wasn't living in fear. I felt I wasn't living at all, but surviving, and aware that I'm living through history. It's late September by now, and this tree, it's wonderful. It's turning yellow, losing the odd leaf. My fledglings have long gone and the nights are drawing in. But my tree, it's prepared me for winter as it's doing for itself. The second wave is here. October, November, lockdowns get strict again. We need and pray for this vaccine. It's the light of this long dark tunnel. But my tree, it's not let me down all year. The last few leaves are brown and hanging by a thread. I have to admit, I felt emotionally in a similar mood today. But we have a full circle of this life, tree's life coming around in the coming months. I feel I've been on its journey with it. And I realise that no matter what's happening in the world, nature marches on, as it should do, because even if we don't go on forever, the circle of life does. That's been very reassuring emotionally in what has been the darkest of times. This tree, it gave me a glimmer of hope. The vaccine news came in November, lots of hope that the world and myself will go on to flourish and blossom just like the tree. Without a doubt, none of us will ever forget 2020. The biggest events in my life get cancelled. I got over them very quickly, but I will never again take the simple things for granted. A cup of tea with a good friend, a smile to a stranger on the bus, popping in to see a friend in need to give them a hug, or even sharing the time of day with my neighbour, hugging anyone that wants one. What I have enjoyed this year is watching nature, the tree, the birds and the squirrels, all the flowers and the changing seasons. Because collectively we held our breath in 2020. December, there's a bit of relaxation briefly for us all to meet, but 2021 is the year of the vaccine. It's here and it's coming to everyone. We all need good health, good friends, family and each other. Let's hope we all can have a happy and healthy 2021 and beyond. Nature in the world is amazing, so let's look after it and gain strength from it and each other. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much for that, Anne. That was really, really nice. And again, a good kind of overview of how you felt and how it's been for you. And again, I think a good example of how writing things down can help you. And I think Yeah, and I think that, I don't know what you would say, Anne, but I think some people are sometimes frightened of that as well, because they think, oh, I'm not good at English, or I've not done writing, and you don't have to, just, you know, write down what you feel and
Yeah.
see how that comes out. That was wonderful. Thank you for that.
Anne, you mentioned there in your story about, you know, technology and how it's really connected us while we've been sort of isolated and not been able to see family and friends. And that ties in with your story of the tree as well, because trees can sometimes look like they're standing on their own, but actually they're interconnected underground that we don't see. You know, they have this this web system underground that they sometimes refer to as the World Wide Web underground, where
Yeah.
all trees and living things are connected to each other. So I suppose that's similar to what we've all been going through just now, isn't it? You know, we've all been in our own homes, but with technology, we're able to still connect and keep in touch and support each other that way, because it's been our only option for now.
Yeah, there's been some amazing things. In fact, my mother-in-law, she was on a kind of pilot project way back about 2 years ago now, I think it was, when Alzheimer Scotland was trying to do the trials on GPS tracking and everything. That was back when she was able to go out, and it was so good. She didn't like it. It didn't work for her. She used to put it in the bin, which was difficult. She didn't like being tracked, but I thought it was a wonderful thing. But I know that you can now get them to put in people's shoes. You can hide them in the lining of things, and it's amazing. Personally, we use a camera at mum-in-law's front door just now, which is great. It doesn't invade our privacy in any way. It points out the way, but it's got sound on it, which is amazing. So we know if there's anybody at our door, if there's any issues, or she's trying to get out. But it also lets us just listen in for 5 minutes in the morning to know that a radio's on or whatever. Someone else I know is using a fridge opening device, and it notifies you on your phone, like lets the family know that they've been in the fridge. Technology is just getting so much more slicker and easier to use. It's so good. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so has anyone got any questions or any comments that they want to make? Obviously no pressure to do so if you don't think so, that's all right.
Hi.
Yeah, Caroline. Yeah,
Caroline here, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I'm worried about with the lockdown restrictions easing and everything getting back to normal is my aunt wasn't too keen on getting into a care home.
Mm-hmm.
So we are allowed at this moment to take her out, obviously with very strict restrictions to it. But does anyone get any advice as when we have her out, how do we get her back again if she refuses to go back? That's the one thing I'm really worried about.
Yeah.
So does anyone get any advice for that, please?
I don't know if anyone else, any other carers in the call, if you've ever had any kind of similar situations or anything that you've tried. I don't know. First.
Hi, sorry.
Yeah.
Do you mean? Hi, sorry, it's Anne here. Sorry. Do you mean, in Caroline, in the way of like when you take her out physically, she won't want to come home again? Is that more what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. She out her own house, and obviously she doesn't have it now because it was a council house, so we've had to hand that back. So yeah, it's whether she will go back, because she does realise sometimes she is in a home. Sometimes she thinks she's in a hospital, but it's okay if she thinks that. But if she knows she's going back to a home, we're just scared that she'll refuse to go back.
I know, it's really difficult. I remember the one time that I took my mum with me, actually, when I was looking at care homes, mum, and she never wanted to get into one, and thankfully I didn't have to do it. We managed to do it without. But I took her one day to have a look at it herself, and we were there. It was a really nice one, very expensive one, and it was lovely. It was like a hotel. I'd have lived in it myself. I remember the day we took her, and we're looking all around it. We were there for a good hour, and we all sat and had a wee chat. And it's just as we were leaving, I said, what do you think of that place? Do you like it? She went, oh, it's absolutely beautiful. I said, would you like to live there? She went, no. And I understand what you mean. It's a very difficult one that, I don't know, it's getting the point across to them that it's really the safest and best thing for them. But as we all know as carers, that's really difficult, isn't it? Sorry,
in a home, just purely for safety reasons. She's
very
mobile. She's 74 today, but she is extremely mobile and fit as a fiddle otherwise. But yeah, that's just the one thing we're kind of worried about, is when we do get her out.
I know, it is the problem. And in a way, I used to worry that mum wasn't I mean, I didn't want her to get into a care facility, but I'm glad that things were getting that way, they were heading that way, and it's why I went down that road, because one day we were advised by mum's CPS, or psychiatric nurse, that if she went out, to let her go and just follow slightly behind. And I did that one evening, and she was only out my sight for about 10-15 seconds, and a man had stopped in a car and was trying to put her in the car already. It kind of worries. So absolutely I understand that sometimes going into the care facility is the only thing, but it's hard to get it. I understand fully. It draws on your heartstrings and theirs, and it's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, because we would like to take her out. I mean, she's not been out since she went in June, February the 14th. So she's only been out into the garden. But yeah, we would like to take her out for a coffee or that.
I think I'm just trying to think of a few things that'll come to you as well. I think things you can try, and again, some things might work and some might not, but I'm thinking about maybe like before you take it, so if you turn up at the care home before you take her out, if that makes sense, if you say to her and explain to her that we're going out, wherever it is you're going for, and then we'll do whatever it is you're going to do, and then we'll bring you back here, and that'll be you coming back home. And she still might say at some point, like, I don't want you to come on, we'll go and do that and see what happens, and then keep kind of maybe saying it halfway through again, like, you know, we've got half an hour left or an hour left, and we're going to go back to where you're staying, or maybe have something that she can go back to, as in when she's coming back in, like, let's go and get you like a cup of tea or something that you can kind of transition her into, if that makes sense. I don't know, it might work, it might not, but it's just sometimes I think preparing people for the transition points is sometimes helpful, and just letting them know what's happening, so it doesn't come like a shock to her if maybe she does get confused about where she's going back to and things like that. So maybe something like that. I'm not sure. That's just something I'm trying to think of that you might be able to do. Ray, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking, Caroline, I think you'd mentioned in one of your previous sessions that she'd built quite a friendship with someone.
Yeah. That old lady.
It might be good to say, you know, like just so Commander was saying, maybe halfway through the visit, remember you having a cup of tea with so-and-so when we go back, buy a cake or a biscuit and take that back with you, and make sure that they're getting sitting together when they do go back to have that blethering cup of tea or whatever it is. So, you know, just introduce something positive, that she's going to see a friend.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Caroline, can I ask, is she settled where she is? Like when she's currently in the home, does she ask to go home, or is she quite settled?
She was really bad at the beginning, to the point where they were thinking of moving her, because she was so just banging doors and everything. But then I think once, because it was hard because she was in hospital, and then she had to isolate in a side room for 2 weeks. And then she got moved to the home, and then had to isolate again. So that was like 4 weeks where she was just in this one room with no one else except for the carers getting in. And then when they opened it up again, when she was allowed out, she kind of get better and better. And now I would say she was settled now. Yeah, she still asks about her home, but she's a lot more settled than what she was,
I know it'll be absolutely different for everybody, but I know of a few families that we've been in contact recently who've had the same concerns, and actually have been quite surprised that you know, they've settled so much to the point where they were going back in again, and they recognise that as home. So I mean, it could go either way, absolutely, and obviously that's something that you worry about until it happens, but sometimes these worries don't actually transpire, and she might be quite happy to go home. So it might not be a negative situation. But just back to what Amanda was saying there about, you know, explaining what the plan for the day is. Sometimes if someone's more visual, if they respond more to visual problems, so like a picture of where home is and where the cafe is that you're going to can help too, because they might recognise that more than you saying where you're going.
Good idea. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and that's excellent. And you can use that type of stuff for any kind of situation with somebody with dementia, because sometimes it is helpful to kind of prompt with both visuals and explaining, you know, things that happen. And I think sometimes as well, unfairly, depending on how advanced their dementia is, I think, and I've found this in previous roles where I worked in a day centre for people with dementia and also care at home, that people have an assumption that when someone has got advanced dementia or does forget, what you've said, you know, in a short space of time, that you shouldn't tell them that. And I'm like, but you know, at the end of the day, it's still important to tell someone, even if they're really advanced, even if they've got if they no longer are able to have any non-verbal communication, it's still important to explain who you are, what's happening, you know, what's going to be happening next, because you really don't have the complete understanding of exactly what they're taking in still at that point. So I always think it's really important just to do that. And I'm sure you all do that, but I meant more towards kind of staff, that I would say to them, you know, still, you know, talk about who you are and what you're doing, because it's really important. And I think it's the same regardless, that you should always try that, and because you never know what they're going to pick up and what might help them feel just a wee bit more secure themselves, because they might panic about things, and especially if they aren't able to verbalise it as much, then there's no way for them to be able to tell you, and that might increase their anxiety and things like that as well, and make them more unsettled. So if you're able to try and help that level of anxiety, that's always good as well.
Yeah,
okay.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, does anybody get anything else before we finish up? No, okay. Well, it was really great to see all of you today. I just want to thank all of our speakers again for coming along today. And again, we'll do a follow-up email as we always do. So I'll give you links to the recording for the session. I'll give you some of the print-offs and printables that we've been talking about, and I'll also give you the link to some more information about the counselling service as well with Shireen, and just so you've got that as well. And then if there's any other questions that you have, as usual, like in a couple of days' time, or there's something that comes into your head, you'll have my email address. Just drop me an email and I'll signpost you or find someone that can answer your questions for you. Okay. But thank you again, and thank you particularly, Anne, thank you very much for your contribution. It was really appreciated, and we appreciate you giving up your time, and a lovely story. It was lovely. You should write more of them. They're really great. I love them. They're really helpful, so that's great.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, it was really great to see you all. So this is the final one in our series at the moment of the webinar. So we will be giving out handouts to go along with all of the 4 sessions that we've run, along with links to all the recordings in case you missed any or you want to go back over them again. And we'll also be sending out a wee kind of questionnaire as well, just to get some feedback on the series so far, and what kind of things you'd like to see in the future, so that hopefully we can continue doing similar type sessions in the future. But I hope it's been helpful today, and I really appreciate everyone coming along, and take care, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank
See you later.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.